My name is John Pasfield, and I'm going to read from my novel Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am. The title of this reading will be Pauline Johnson, Video 11, Pauline's 3 Divas. Here's the cover of the novel. Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am, a novel by John Pasfield, a photograph of the historical Pauline Johnson. Pauline Johnson was born on the Six Nations Reserve in Ontario, Canada. Was she American, British, or Canadian? Was she English, Mohawk, or mixed? She added up her assets and liabilities and decided that the Pauline the world would see would be Pauline the performance artist, Pauline on stage. As for the real Pauline, she would keep that to herself. Here's a note on terminology. Such terms as Aboriginal and Indigenous were not in common usage at the time at which the events of a novel take place. To refer to her mother's people, the historical Pauline Johnson used the terms English and white. To refer to her father's people, she used the terms Indian, Mohawk, and red. While the novel's fiction, I have used Pauline Johnson's terms throughout the novel in the interest of historical accuracy. Now, Pauline Johnson, the main character of this novel, is a performer who is now retired. In retirement, she reviews her life and career. In order to do so, she compares the imagery that her life and career has generated in her mind with the lives and careers of three of the greatest performers of her era, the late 19th century. There is one image from each of these three lives in each of the 16 chapters of Pauline Johnson's thought, but in the interest of brevity, I will read 6 images for each of these three divas in turn. So, she compares and contrasts her life and her career with 3 people. Sarah Bernhardt is the first one we'll look at. So, page 5, a reference, a thought about Sarah Bernhardt. Let me find it here. Here we are. There was a girl who was born in Paris. This girl was born to act. She could play the grandest dame. She could play the ingenue. Every eye in every theater was glued to the stage. So, a high level of achievement from a female who performs on stage. We go to page 13 for another thought about Sarah Bernhardt in the mind of Pauline Johnson. There was no limit to her talent. She threw her net over every kind of part. Shakespeare, Corneille, Racine, Dumas, Hugo, Rostand, Sardou. She made every role her own. So again, high standards. Page 21. She was the queen of the pose and the gesture. She had a golden voice. Every playwright sent her manuscripts. I have written this part just for you. It is copied from the play you were in last year. So from page 21, we go to page 29 for more about Sarah Bernhardt. She could play males and she could play females. She could play young and she could play old. The secret was very simple. She knew who her audience came to see. Every play served as a vehicle for her charms. From 29 we go to 116. So leaving out a lot, if we go all the way to 116 from 29, you can do the math on that one, but we're leaving out a lot of imagery about Sarah Bernhardt, just to keep this brief, but also all the imagery about Pauline Johnson, which she's using to compare image to image, her own life, Sarah Bernhardt's life, her career, Sarah Bernhardt's career. So here's more about Sarah. In all this time, she kept her secret. She was not what she had claimed. The character on the stage was a fiction. People thought she was playing herself, but the role that she was playing was just a part. And then 124, I'll just find it here. Here we are. Sarah Bernhardt. I am me, she often told herself. The public has never seen me at all. I turned Phaedra into my character, Electra, and Medea as well. They are just parts that I turn into the character that I play instead of me. The public has never known the real me at all. Well, that's a short version of the imagery about Sarah Bernhardt in the mind of Pauline Johnson as she thinks over her whole life and career in Vancouver near the end of her life. Eleonora Dusa is another of the divas, these international actresses who won great fame and acclaim during the late 19th century. Let's go to page 7 and have a look. Yeah, here we are here. There was a girl who was born in Vigevano. This girl was born to act. She was completely absorbed in every role she played. She transformed herself into each and every character. Every eye in every theater was glued to the stage. Then we go to page 23 for more about Eleonora Dusa. Let me find it here. Her family were theatrical people. She was absorbed from birth in the art. Generations of actors had formed her. She would immerse herself in the roles that she played. She became the character everyone saw on the stage. Then we go to page 31. Here it is here. The secret was very simple. She chose roles which spoke to her heart. She effaced herself completely. She let the characters use her being as a medium. She became every character she played. Then we go to page 39. Here we are. This is Eleanor Adusa. She was a diva in her prime. She put herself in service to every drama. Every role was the essence of that character. She portrayed their naked compulsions, griefs, and joys, while on stage, she, herself, would cease to exist. Then we go to page 64, again, leaving out an awful lot about both Eleanor Adusa and the main character, Pauline Johnson. She never saw herself as a celebrity. Publicity was a chore that she would shun. No one knew what she did when she was not acting. She was never known to give an interview. She said, when off the stage, I do not exist. And that was page 64. So we go to 103. The last one I'm going to read, but there are other images in the novel about Ladusa. What did I say? 103. Okay, here we are. The tours continued. The fame grew greater. She performed throughout the world. People marveled at her artistry. Every theater was always filled. So that's all I'm going to read about Ladusa. But here's an aside. At the time that I wrote these 3 diva image arcs for this novel, I had no thought of writing a novel on the topic of Eleonora Dusa. However, subsequently, I did so, and it's just been published. So here is the new novel, Eleonora Dusa, Let Me Have My Wings, a novel by John Passfield. That's the historical Eleonora Dusa in a gondola in Venice. And I'll do videos on that novel shortly, but for now I'll just set it aside and we'll go back to the topic at hand, which is Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am. Anna Pavlova is the third of the divas whom she compares herself to. Pauline Johnson, comparing herself to these amazingly successful females who trod the boards, who performed on stage. Page 8 for Anna Pavlova. Here we are. Yes. There was a girl who was born in St. Petersburg. Nothing is known about her birth. Was she a peasant? Was she an aristocrat? There are many, many legends, but nothing is known. Then we go to page 16. Yes. She was taken to the ballet. She was a very fragile child. She was enchanted with the pageantry. It was the spectacle she admired. Every ballerina was a fairy on the stage. Then we go to page 24. Yes. She was enrolled in ballet school. It was hard for the fragile child, but she worked and worked at her artistry. She learned that fairies sweat and strain. She would imagine herself as a fairy as the orchestra played. From 24, we go to 32. The ballet did not come easy. Her feet and ankles and limbs were wrong. Her fellow students thought she was awkward. They would taunt her mercilessly. She determined that she would never shed a tear. Then from 32, we'll go all the way to 120. That's about 90 pages. Leaving out, as I say, many, many images. And the reason these images, of course, are spread out is that, let me just finish finding the page here. 120 it is. And I have it. Okay. The reason the images are spread out is that she's interlayering these images for comparison and contrast. Her own life, Pauline Johnson, life and career, the lives of these three divas, life and career. Her family life was not known, not to her nor to anyone else. She knew nothing of the past, whether peasant or aristocrat. She had made herself into everything she was. And lastly, 127 for Pavlova. Here we are. She continued to perfect her art form. She performed on every stage. It was an act of imagination. She was a vision of the mind. She was such a pure performer. It was as if the dancer was not a person at all. So three divas, Sarah Bernhardt, Eleanor Adusa, and Anna Pavlova. Well, here's a note on this topic. If we are intent, as all serious people are, on evaluating our lives, whose lives do we draw on for imagery of comparison? Do we choose notable failures? Do we choose those whose lives seem to be mediocre? Or do we choose lives that in our own estimation are lived at the highest level of action and thought? In this case, Pauline Johnson in retirement chooses the great artists of her time, three great females who, like herself, have had careers on the stage. Female artists whom the world has acknowledged as women of great artistic achievement. The rest of the novel, all the words that I didn't read in this presentation, presents the imagery that the main character, Pauline Johnson, is turning her own life and career into as she parallels and contrasts her own life with the imagery of these three chosen divas. Now, has her choice of imagery been made wisely? Is the choice reassuring? Has her own life and career paralleled or contrasted with some or all of these divas? And would you divide the question in two? Compare the career in each case, compare the life in each case. And would you, in each case, come to separate conclusions? And do you think that Pauline Johnson, the character, the main character of this novel, is doing the same? Well, I could go on and on. There's no shortage of questions for the reader of this novel to ask, as Pauline Johnson, the main character, asks herself. It's available on Amazon. I'll just hold it up one last time. Pauline Johnson, Know Who I Am, a novel by John Passfield. You can find it on Amazon, and you'll find some information there. rocksmillspress.com, my publisher, ROCKSMILLSPRESS.com. Information there. My own website, johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca. Not only information there, but two books, planning notebook with lots of information about how I actually wrote the novel and thought my way through the process, the writing process. And then a journal of reflection, what do I think of this novel now that it's in rough draft and I'm polishing it? So if you're interested in that kind of thing, that topic, have a look at johnpassfield.ca. Lastly, I'll say thank you for watching this video.